Is your device secure? Probably not. Even if you're using something like BitLocker or FileVault, you're probably doing it wrong. There are many issues, but let's start with the big one, password recovery. The default across all major platforms is to enable password recovery. Sounds fine, right? But this literally means that Apple or Google or Microsoft have their own separate key which they can use to decrypt your data, which they use to open your door whenever you lose your own keys. That also means that criminals and governments, that's redundant, which can manipulate those companies, also have their own key to your data. Disable this immediately unless you literally can't remember your own password, in which case you have bigger problems anyways. Now let's talk TPM. Almost all modern devices have a variant of a TPM chip. I have many issues with them. See my rant about passkeys, but the way Windows uses them by default to encrypt your data is particularly disgusting. Your TPM has its own built-in key which can be used to secure and verify your system. The big problem is Windows BitLocker by default uses literally only your TPM key to encrypt your data. Your long, secure password is basically just for show. And all of your data is actually being protected by a key that is essentially just sitting in plain text on your motherboard. Criminals and governments, sorry, redundant again, who are able to physically access your device can bypass your consent and password to decrypt your data. You should change this setting to use your password instead of the TPM. Other operating systems already do that. Now let's talk algorithms. Not the kind that feeds you AI slop and flash talk, but the kind that protects your data from prying eyes. Your Windows machines and any Intel Macs default to using 128-bit encryption instead of 256-bit encryption. That's not double the safety. That is 2 to the 128th power times more secure. That's 39 digits. There's really no good reason to choose 128 bits these days, especially since our much less powerful phones have been using 256 bits for years. But let's not be alarmist, 128 bits is still strong encryption. But why not take such a massive easy win? Change this setting in Windows BitLocker or upgrade your Mac. But what if you want even more security? Try out VeraCrypt. Then you can encrypt every single bit of data multiple times, like 3 separate keys in 3 different algorithms. You are hedging your bets just in case one or all of the algorithms are broken in the future. As we move into the quantum and AI era, I'll keep my hedges high like Bezos in Beverly Hills. I personally keep all of my most important data backed up on multiple separate drives encrypted with VeraCrypt, sometimes with additional nesting, because with VeraCrypt you can create individual encrypted containers almost like a super secure zip file. Overkill? Yes. For now. Now let's talk pins and biometrics. I know you love your Face ID and fingerprints. And how could you ever forget your 6-digit passcode? So easy, right? Yeah, that's the problem. 6 digits is only 1 million combinations. Your biometrics are easy to spoof and even easier to force against your will. A password with actual letters in it is almost infinitely more secure. And if you didn't know, yes, you can put one on your phone. But wouldn't that just be impossibly inconvenient? Well, if you restart your device right now, it will ask you for your passcode. It won't let you use biometrics because that's insecure, but after the first login, you're good to go. So at the very least, we want to put a password in place of that first passcode, and then you can use biometrics after that. For the most paranoid though, yes, it's a painful password prompt every single time. Great way to kick your digital dopamine addiction. For everyone else, there's an important trick to remember. Hold your power and volume up buttons. Boom, biometrics are now disabled until you log in again. This can be a lifesaver in countries like the US, where law enforcement cannot legally require you to enter in your passcode or password, but they can require you to scan your face or fingerprint. However, if you're ever truly in a situation where you feel you might be compromised, you should shut your device off entirely. After that initial unlock, your data is decrypted and accessible with the right tools. They can bypass any authentication method you have in front of it. Your data is only ever truly secure when the device is powered off. I want to dive a little deeper on what I touched on in the first section about password recovery. A lot of apps and services will use privacy and security as a selling point, saying things like end-to-end encryption, or E2E. iCloud is one that immediately comes to mind. Basically, the point is you should feel good about storing all your data in the cloud because it's safe and secure, and they couldn't even see it even if they wanted to. Tiny little asterisk. If you configure it correctly. Now, I have many problems with the cloud, but for proper E2E, they are correct. The provider cannot access whatever it is that they are storing for you. However, they also assume that you are stupid and or lazy, and so they default for convenience. So the whole thing ends up as literally just marketing. Remember what I said earlier about companies having their own separate key, which they use to provide password recovery? The same exact principle applies here. If there is a way for you to access your data without entering in the password which encrypts it, then their end-to-end encryption is pointless. It's real, it exists, but it has no practical effect because they have your key. You have to either manually configure for this or seek out less mainstream alternatives with more secure default settings. For my iCloud example, however, that means enabling advanced data protection. For other services, that usually means 1, setting a password, and then 2, ensuring there are no recovery mechanisms in place. Oh, and one last thing. Encrypted email is practically an oxymoron. Don't bother paying anyone for that. Now, I know many people will say that this is all overkill, and it just doesn't apply to the average person. Let's be clear what you're actually saying, though. Security doesn't matter for the average person. They simply need to trust that corporations and governments will protect them, mostly from themselves. That's what you're saying. I disagree hugely, but admittedly, I am biased. I had to learn all of this out of necessity during my cybercrime days, when the Five Eyes governments and sophisticated hackers and big tech companies were all legitimate threats. But let me ask you, do you really trust Microsoft? Google? Apple? Do you really trust your government? And if so, do you trust them to protect you from other foreign governments, from the future's rogue AI, from all the possible criminals? And do you trust your next government, the opposition? I don't know if you've noticed, but worldwide, with few exceptions, each new government, left, right, or center, gets ever more brazen about axing your civil liberties. Maybe you really trust your laws and institutions, but guess what? Laws can and do change, or they just pretend they don't exist. They are words on paper, not magic spells. You have the means to protect yourself, so do it, because no one else will.